most of the money goes to payroll, consulting, and marketing. Those are like the big three. But I buy those for the business the same way that I buy clothing. I see the money there, and then I say, okay, how much do I need for a rainy day? How much do I need if we have a slow month? Whatever's over that number, I'm like, okay, we can invest this right back into the business. Instead of taking it as profit and reinvesting it in like a low risk way, so like for instance buying real estate, like a term life insurance policy or whatever that thing is, and I say, okay, I'm going to hire a marketing consultant, I'm going to send another 20,000 letters, I'm going to hire this, you know what I mean? So like, you don't seem to do that, and I'm kind of like, I guess what I'm asking is like, what do you do? How do you break it up in your head? How do you achieve that result besides just like frugality and paying attention to function versus like what do I think is going to make me feel big or important?
So
that's easy.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I may appear like the reason I understand it pretty well, and nobody's bulletproof, is that I've been through what you're going through now.
Right.
Been through there with other businesses, and like, you know, I think what I've learned is that two things: running your business lean, and I mean really lean, is so important because things like payroll, marketing can get caught up, and you're huge chunks of money in front of you that are really dangerous to spend. And as far as having like a 1 month, I would say more like a 6 month buffer is really what you need to have in play. A 6 month buffer for your operating costs is really what you need to come across, because everybody can have a bad month, everybody can have 2 bad months. And that would be my suggestion for that, and run lean. Because one thing I've learned is that as great as it is to have payroll, because you have good people and so forth, that is also the first thing that will chew you alive if you're not careful. So, and you can't ever stop marketing, right? You stop marketing and it's all not worth anything. So if I were to look at that, my recommendation would be find yourself 6 months of liquidity. You don't necessarily want to invest that money either too, because you need the liquidity of it, unless you have an investment that you can pull money very fast from, but your business needs the liquidity. And then anything above and beyond that number. I think for maybe what you're seeing, because wholesaling, it's common, right? Like wholesaling is like, you could have a month, you have like an unbelievable amount of money, and then you could have like a month where you don't, like this month, whatever. Right. So like that was actually one of the reasons Atlas Property Management was born, was because of the stability of cash flow from wholesaling. Mm-hmm. So like, and now like, you know, at one point it was, you know, you were kind of by yourself, but you have an operation now, like a full operation running. So it's no longer, you know, hey, we have a bad month, whatever, George doesn't get to go out and buy a shirt, it's just George. But now you feel obligated to people and make sure people feel a certain way. So yeah, buffering, take those good months, and even though it's a really great month, really set that cash aside and have an operating rainy day budget, and you'll feel a lot. I mean, still doesn't feel good to have not a good month, but every business cycles on a monthly basis.
Yeah. It decreases the terribleness of what can happen.
Yeah, don't look at those great months and say I can spend more money. Look at them as like, do I have all my bases covered first? Am I protecting the money first, making money second? Because you make so much damn money right now that like, or you have so much money coming in that you don't need more. You don't need more things right now, right? The only thing you want to do is protect what I have around me, what I've built. Protect this. Don't let this fall out from under me. So I would focus on just having more liquid cash and
protect it and lean it out.
Protect it, lean it out, and then when you get to that point of stability of 6 months in front of you, you know, you're saying it's going to take an atomic bomb to blow this thing up. Then you have something that you can rely on for the rest of your life.
You have something that's sellable too. You can sell that business.
Very much so, and you're doing all the right stuff, and it's very common. Like it's not uncommon. I mean, I have bad months in lending too. Like it happens. But the difference in lending is that two things. We have a buffer, and I also have like I know exactly how lean we run. Mm-hmm. We run our lending business very lean. My most expensive thing this month probably was the hoodies. Yeah. Like buying a bunch of hoodies, right? Mm-hmm. So we're very, very careful with how we spend the money operationally, because it's so easy when that money flows in. You know, like you 200 grand in your account. You go, I'll buy this. We'll go consulting here. Yep. It's so easy to do that. So you just want to have like a plan before that money hits. Okay, easy. Like no, just like taxes, right?
Right. Absolutely.
40%. You're over here. 50%, you're over here. Whatever.
Okay, so let me run a scenario by you and just see how you would handle it, so I can kind of just like sort of stand over your shoulder while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say you make $100K, and it's not a cash flow of $100,000 over 6 months. It's okay. We make $100,000 on a loan or a default or whatever. I know we were chatting about that earlier. Mm-hmm. Like that $100,000. Can you break down where every dollar goes, how it separates both in your head and your accounting, and like so you say, okay, 40% we moved into an account, It's for taxes, period. Is that before you're paying operating expenses? Is that after?
Operating expenses first, always.
Okay, so you get 100K in revenue. Can you walk me through exactly what you do with that 100,000?
Sure. So I'll give you the bigger picture from HMB, because there's HMB PA and HMB, or like we operate them separately. But like from the bigger picture from HMB, it's typically like a 30-30-30 breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
So typically 30% will go into like covers operating costs. Mm-hmm. About 30%, 33%. 33% will then go into either rainy day stuff or like investing in the business type stuff, and then 33% or whatever will pay the partners distributions. That's roughly how it's done, and that's the short answer to kind of how we do it. And then we also know over time how long, how much it takes to, like how much of a buffer we need. So like I would suggest 6 months. You might say, okay, 4 is good. You might say, oh, maybe your business, the way your cash flow works, you need 12. I don't know. Like every business definitely has a buffer, or should have a buffer.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of really knowing the life cycle of your clients and the cycles and so forth. Like property management, you need a different kind of buffer, because it's just like, it's like a cell phone bill, it pays every month. So it's a different kind of buffer. But a high margin volume like yours should have a pretty good size buffer, because if you don't have like you said, you had 2 closings last year for 150G.
Right.
What are those 2 closings for 10G? Each
Yep.
changes the whole month, right?
Exactly.
Changes the perspective of the whole month. So you just need to be aware that like it was a good month and you got paid, but like hey, we did 2 closings, so the units in volume there it would be something to consider. But I would definitely, first thing I would focus on is a buffer to say, and you have a breaking point too. Like if the market's changing on you. My very first where I cut my teeth in business was from a guy that really. I look back on him back then, I didn't know any difference. Like, I thought he was a jerk to people, but he was just a guy running a business.
Yeah.
But he pushed his breaking point mentally. I think he probably should have gotten to a different business or folded that business that I was learning from him in earlier. But he kept, throwing bad money at bad. Yep. So recognizing when you're in a losing situation too, it's okay to be in a losing situation. Just get out of it. Like know when to cut bait. So if you're like 6 months in and like the arrow's still pointing down and you're dipping in the rainy fund, you have to now make a decision and goes, do I do it for another 6 months? Do I pull in other resources and dig the hole deeper? Or do I say I need another business? Right, this isn't for me, or it's not, the market's not right, whatever. Sure. So that's also important to ask yourself too, is like, what's my cutoff? Like what's my hard stop too in something? And like people like to believe that everybody is Coca-Cola, but the reality is we're all small businesses, and small businesses have lifespans, and it's hard to make a stable small business last for 20 or 30 years. Yeah. Like that's hard, man.
The government terms a small business as anyone making less than $25 million a year.
We are micro businesses. businesses. So
Okay, so going back to that $100,000 question, I think you gave some great strategy and lessons for that. So like, if you don't want to get into like profit margins and like how much owners make and things like that's fine. But like, so you have 100K come in and you're paying expenses first. So let's call your real expenses, for the sake of argument, 15%. So you're moving, let's say, 20% into your expenses nut, so that you have a little bit of savings.
Does expenses include payroll?
Yeah, expenses.
Definitely more than 15. It'd be like 30 to 35%.
Okay, so let's say you've got a third of everything comes in as expenses, operating expenses, including payroll, right off the bat. So you're socking 40 away into that thing just to keep a little bit of extra bread there, so you can let it build up. So 40 is gone. So now we're working with 60. So then out of that 60, you've got marketing costs kind of fall into operating expenses.
Yes.
Sort of. Okay. So what are you keeping for, like, and then you're out of that 60, you're saying, okay, 40% of that I'm going to throw to taxes. So that's another, let's just call it 30% to keep the math easy, because I'm shitty at doing math in my head. Mm-hmm. So now you've got 30% of your $30,000 left to play with. What do you do with that 30K? How do you
after you distribute it to the owners?
No. So you got all your operating expenses are now taken care of because they've been separated off. You put it in an account with a little bit of extra. You've put all your tax money in another account with a little bit of extra. Now, what do you do with that 30,000? How do you, like, do you keep 5, pay 5? Like, what do you do?
So the owner distribution would be somewhere between probably like, call it 30 and 40 grand of that, and then they would pay their taxes out of that. Like they would pay their 40% each owner out of that. but there isn't a remaining buffer there that depends on the month too. Some months are just like, I don't have any consulting things coming up. I don't have any like additional marketing things that I want to buffer. We already have our rainy day fund in place for whatever it is. So then like maybe something's not coming up, so we take a larger distribution. Mm-hmm. But if there's like, hey, I'd like to go and do the consulting thing in Texas. Right. So like the money is there that month. If we don't use it, particularly for our business growth thing, the owners will take the distribution and then pay their 40% tax out of that.
Okay.
But if we're going to use it, we know we're ready to use it. The owners don't have to cut out of their, they were expecting a baseline out of that 100 grand, say 30 grand. And then, that you'll pay 40. So you'll net 18 grand that month or whatever, it is.
Yeah.
So, but if you're not going to do a business growth activity with that money, then the owners will take the distribution.
Right.
Pending the rainy day fund is already set up.
Okay.
So that would be how we do it.
So you get 100K, 40 goes to, let's just say 40 goes to operating expenses, so that's gone. And out of the 60, 30 or 40 of that goes to owner's distributions, which we're not calling profit in this scenario. We're calling that an owner distribution. Right. So the 20 that you have left to play with is, so you've got 20 left to play with, plus you've got 7%-ish of the tax stuff you squared away, and then 7%-ish of the operating stuff you squared away for your little funds. So that remaining 20K, let's say you don't have a rainy day fund, I'm assuming half of that goes to a rainy day fund?
At least, if I don't have any, at least. I'd be building that aggressively.
Would we call that business profit in that case?
It also shows profit to your accountant. Your accountant's going to show, because they're going to show that money on the books. And your accountant sometimes will suggest, just spend the money so you can do write-offs and shit. And I'm like, you're not running this business, buddy. Like, give me 3 bad months and you're not my client next year.
Yeah, totally.
So you, from a business owner's perspective, it'll sit there as money that, and if you have a liquid investment, you can put that money in that investment as long as you have access to that capital fairly quickly. You don't want to be in a position where 2 bad months, I got to tap into that, and you call up your stockbroker and they go, we can liquidate you in 60 days, and you're like, damn it, I need the money now. But yes, to your answer is, if I didn't, 50% of that into the rainy day fund makes sense. If I didn't have a rainy day fund, I'd be even more aggressive out of the rainy day fund. And then pending my marketing, marketing was already built into the operating expenses. So with that said, and then I would do the fun stuff that you're talking about, the stuff that really grows in terms of the consulting thing in Texas, or I'm just using that as an example. But those are more of the bonus things you get to do for your business. And those become more and more as the rainy day fund is set in.
So actually, interestingly enough, extracting a lesson from that, the way, I know you got several partners and things like that, investors, things of that nature. So the way it sounds is really you guys are taking your profit first, and then you're saying, okay, how much money do we have left over after taking our profit, which the way you guys seem to do it is an owner's distribution. You're not really paying yourself a salary necessarily. Right. I know there's not just one owner that owns everything. And then you're left over with some play money to say, okay, do we want to expand with this? Do we want to learn? What do we want to do with this little secondary chunk of business profit after we've already made those distributions?
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's how we do it. And it's like the cart before the horse, or whatever, chicken before the egg type question. I've just learned that through my experience in building these kind of businesses, that's what seems to work.
Yeah, it seems to work. Yeah, definitely.
It seems to. I live a much more less emotionally volatile life because of that.
Yeah.
Because I get it, dude. I mean, back in the day, wholesaling, and you run a much tighter ship than I ever ran in terms of just your sense of everything. So imagine what you're going through emotionally without everything you have in place. it was
when you're really just trying to strike a match in a dark room so you can see the door when it's
it is. And then sometimes
going out.
You might have that huge closing and it's like a gas, you just lit a match on gasoline, and then other months you're just trying to light a wet match all month long, and you're and I remember days that I would kick money out of my own account back into the business. Money that you thought was yours ain't yours. It's going back into the business. I've definitely done that. And so you find ways to prevent that. You find ways to go, I'm sick of taking money back out of my personal account. And maybe it was just through trial and error default, but that's what we've learned, and it just seems to provide a much more stable environment, living-wise, self-wise, personality-wise. And not everybody can live like that, but it works.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, the thing is, not everybody can live like that until they have to.
Until they have to.
Right?
Yeah.
So, everything's, when sales projections are over top and there's tons of revenue coming in and approximately how much is profit, everything's fucking fine.
Yeah.